TruthSeekah and or its affiliates are not responsible for any strange phenomena that may occur during or after listening to this podcast, which may include the following: heightened senses of awareness, psychic abilities, UFO sightings, alien contact, time loss, out-of-body experiences, ringing in the ears, ESP, lucid dreaming, increased synchronicities, astral projection, telepathy, stronger intuition, levitation, miraculous healings, and or remote viewing. Please be advised to listen at your own discretion.
Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away?
You done a show on astrology before?
Face the walk on troubled seas, faith to stand when I don't believe. I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna be with you. Won't you come?
You are now locked into the TruthSeekah podcast.
Gargoyles! Psychics! Everything's ungodly! Dark savage!
Streaming live at TruthSeekah.com.
She's not a Christian!
Give it up, y'all.
Your portal to the paranormal, esoteric, and all things spiritual.
She's tampering in dark savage stuff!
And now, your host, TruthSeekah.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? I'm your host, TruthSeekah. This is the TruthSeekah podcast. Excited and delighted to be with you guys again on this amazing day. Got good show lined up for you guys. Some interesting topics as always. Just excited and thrilled to be here to discuss some of these topics at hand, man. So I'm just blessed to be sharing this sacred space with you all today. I gotta say a quick thank you to all the patrons, everybody who's supporting my work over on Patreon. There's just new people supporting daily, and I'm really blown away. I know I say it every time. I sound like a broken record, but I couldn't do this without you. I'm able to put out new music. I got a new album coming out, and I'm able to do these podcasts. All of the stuff that I'm doing, I'm enabled by you guys. So thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. The newest people to join us this last week, we have Mike Hoder, Adrian Forget, Elise Gladscott, Jacob Alexander. Welcome to the family, guys. Thank you so much for believing in me and what I bring to the table. Quick update about what we're doing with the Patreon. You guys know that if you support that way, you get access to the School of the Mystics that we're doing every Thursday night. That will be coming up this Thursday at 7 p.m. Central. What we're doing, we're going to be introducing something new. We're going to be doing, starting a course. I know we've just been kind of hanging out and getting in the spirit with one another, really getting a chance to meet everyone. But this Thursday, we're starting a course entitled Basic Prophetic Training for the Prophetic Ministry. So this is a course by Chris Valatin, and we're going to be doing that. It's going to be several months long because we're only going to be doing one session a week. So make sure you guys are in right at 7 o'clock because the teachings are kind of short, but then the contemplation, the group discussion, and the activation and things like that will kind of all play a part. So make sure you guys are in right when we do that. Also, there's a lot of people watching, a lot of people listening that want to be a part of the School of the Mystics, but you can't because of job or work or family or whatever. You've been asking me to record it. I didn't want to do that because like the conversations we're having are kind of candid. We get into some personal things that probably don't need to be out there in the open, but I'm going to record it just for the patrons. So whoever's a patron, you'll be able to go back and access those lessons that we're going to be doing. So if you come in on the course a couple weeks later, you can go back and listen to the ones that you've missed to kind of get caught up. So we're going to be going through this together. It's going to be good stuff. So thank you guys for supporting my work. If you want to do that, you can head on over to patreon.com patreon.com/TruthSeekah, and sign up for any level of giving per month, anywhere from $1, $5, $10, whatever you're able to do. You get access to so much stuff that we're doing. You get my full discography, which is 10 plus albums, all the new music that I'm putting out, extra podcasts and interviews, and access to the School of the Mystics every Thursday night. We also have a private Facebook group as well. This is where we're building a community and all that good stuff. So let you guys know also, the phone lines are open today. So if you guys want to call in, share your stories, your support, you have questions for the guest or myself, we make that available for you guys today. Especially, like, I get so many messages during the week from people, and like a lot of people want to have like full conversations with me on text message and Messenger on Facebook. It's hard for me to do that, so I make sure that I open the phone lines every time I do a podcast, so you guys can call in, because I can't really have a long dialogue with, like, if you guys seen my inbox, you would know there's just so many people just randomly messaging me or wanting to know questions, or just saying, people randomly message me just saying what's up, and that's it, you know. So all these people hitting me up, so I open up the phone lines if you guys want to call in. The number is streaming across the top of the platform as well as in the description, so make sure you guys take advantage of that. Today we're going to be talking about some interesting topics when it comes to spirituality and our own God-given abilities that we can achieve ourselves, that's within us, and so just kind of awakening those things. And we're going to hear somebody's story today. Cindy Mckean, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Awesome. Thanks for joining me today. You got an awesome story. There's some things that you do for a living, which is key, that I want to get into. We're talking about astrology, the tarot. Is it palmistry? Is that how you would say it? Palmistry,
yeah.
And dowsing for over 24 years. So after 24 years, you should have some interesting things to say about these topics. So whenever we were going live, you were asking me if we've ever done a show on astrology. The closest one we've done was several years back, and we had Santos Bonacci on, and it was actually on astrotheology, but that mixes astrology all within it. So I've got some friends who are really big into astrology. They do it for a living as well. They do readings and they know how to read charts and things like that. So, but as far as having a show dedicated to it, I'm excited to have you on. So thanks for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
So when it comes to these topics that kind of seem taboo for some, especially over here in like Western culture, where do you go for like what was the early moments that you got into this type of work? Was it some things that were maybe you were dealing with ESP and dreams and visions and stuff like that when you were younger? Did that kind of call you into this field, or what was kind of like the defining moments early on for you to get into this type of work?
Well, I was extremely lucky in that my parents are very open to the esoteric world, the occult, the metaphysical in general. They've lived in countries where this was, metaphysical practices were very much a part of their culture. My father, for instance, he's very psychic. His mother was very psychic. And on my mom's side, although she doesn't really have a very keen natural ability, through practice, she was able to tap in. So, this is something that was always a part of my life. On my mom's side too, she was into palm reading, and that's how I learned how to read palms, because she simply, that would be a thing that the ladies would do when they get together. And that was something that her mom did and, her grandmother did. So, yeah, this was when I was about, my parents told me when I was about 2 or 2.5 years old, they noticed already that I was psychic, because I'd point at something and I wasn't able to really elaborate too well, but they, then something would happen to it, or, I would say something, like police, and 2 or 3 minutes later, they finally hear the sirens. So my earliest memories is when I was 4 years old. And I just remember waking up from a dream and telling my parents about it. And they just looked at each other like, wow, you know, she really knows what she's doing here. So they talked to me. I mean, there's only so deep that you could go with a 4-year-old, but yeah. But I remember when I was 10 and I finally bought something on astrology. It was just one of those little scrolls that you buy from, you know, the
oh man,
yeah, it was like one of those. Yeah, exactly. So you know, for me, that was a lot of money, like putting 75 cents into something like that when you're 10 years old. You could buy a toy or candy or something. And yeah, I remember thinking, wow, I like how accurate this is. And yeah, I remember my parents, like, as you know, every now and then growing up, they would tell me, this is a power that you have. And there's a lot of things that you're going to see that you're not going to want to see. So just be prepared for the truth. So when I was 18 years old, I moved overseas and I spent a little bit of time in Cairo, Egypt, where magic is very much a part of their lives. I mean, if you look at the ancient pharaohs and if you just look at the history of the land, just the geopolitical center of things, they have a lot of firm beliefs and of rituals and superstitions. And I wouldn't even call them superstitions because they seem to be true. Yeah. And it was there that, you know, they were into astrology, for instance, of course, more into palm reading, tea leaf reading and coffee cup reading and things. But they would also do other divinations like reading shells. And a lot of their magic work involved Djinn or genies. Yeah. And yeah, I started attending certain things where, you know, they were actually very, I mean, this kind of scared me because the way that they're into the black magic, it depends. Sometimes they use it as white magic, where you could actually see forms and shapes while they were trapping genies. So,
so they would catch them.
They would catch them.
So okay, yeah. so if there's a genie in a bottle or a genie that's affiliated with some type of clothing or furniture or something like that, so there's a practice of actually catching them and putting them in the lamp, right? Wow.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The one I saw happening, I saw a few, but the one that was really the most outstanding, believe it or not, they caught the genie through a person's thumb because the guy was possessed. And they put a plastic garbage bag around the guy's thumb that they tied around. And they just poked a hole in his thumb with a needle. And it was almost like they extracted it through that, through that piercing. And there was a lot of shouting at the Djinn to try to get it out of him. And then you could see in the bag, like a shape of an elbow or a shape of a back or a knee or a head. I mean, it wasn't anything that was extremely well defined, but you could see that the bag was filling up with a definite form as if a body was coming out. You know, it was like the shape of the body that it was inhabiting. That was pretty strong stuff to see, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Later on, I moved to Ghana in West Africa, and there's a lot of anime religion. So, you know, people that actually might worship water or might worship the rain or, you know, whatever God that they have. And, you know, by that time I was already, I was working in scientific medical research. And we were going from village to village, from the north of Ghana to south. And in a lot of these remote villages, you find people that practice a lot of magic. And there would be things like people would go to the clinic, they're sick, they want a remedy, and they don't really want a prescription of antibiotics. What they want is their
healing.
You know, exactly. It's kind of like their witch doctor to tell them how to heal this. So they would write the antibiotics. It would be something, you know, insignificant and almost like a formality. But then they would say, okay, well, make sure you know, in order to cure this one, what you're going to have to do is take the family icon, crack an egg on it, bury it 7 inches deep, Make sure you put cover that with the blood of the virgin, the menstrual blood of a virgin, and dance around it with only, say, female members of your family for like 7 days. I'm not kidding you. It actually worked. Mm-hmm. So, seeing the magic in West Africa was a lot different than what I would see, say, in the Levant or North Africa. But, that was like pretty much my first exposure. I mean, it was essentially immersion into it once I finally got out of the United States. And it's luckily I've been coming from a family where they were telling me, they were kind of warning me ahead of time what kind of things I might see. So,
That's good. Yeah. Cause if not, there's a lot of people out there who are like born psychic. They're just intuitive with these feelings and emotions and being empathic, and they don't know how to balance the energies. They don't know really what's happening in their body and their mind and things like that. And it can be very overwhelming. So for you to have someone who kind of nurtured that and didn't just say, oh, it's just your imagination, or you just have an overactive imagination, you're just a curious kid or something like that, but they kind of catered to it. And so that says a lot, because there's so many people who are like marginalized and displaced, and they have to go to clinics and they have to go see a psychiatrist or whatever, and looking for answers, and they have no idea what's going on. So to be in an atmosphere where that's catered to is awesome. That's kind of what this podcast is. There's a lot of people who are coming out of religion, and they have like these type of experiences, but then the pastor and the clergy people have no idea what to tell them, except that it's demonic. They stay away from it, stop doing it, run from it, those type of things. And so, but they're not satisfied with those answers, because what I'm saying, they're having these beautiful encounters or these strange encounters, and everything just isn't demonic. I mean, there's good and bad spirits, obviously, but there's in between spirits that just exist, that are over nature and situations and feelings and emotions and things like that. So to be able to tap in and learn how to adapt and listen to these spirits, or learn from them, or block them off for that matter, right? Mm-hmm. So you're talking about this guy who seemingly was possessed or had a evil spirit or unclean spirit, a Djinn, on him. When we talk about astrology in the West, especially coming from like a Christian perspective, they say, like I said, everything's demonic. If we don't understand it, if we can't fully point it out in the Bible, stay away from it, those type of things. So there's a lot of people listening who would say that just by entertaining some of the astrology, tarot, dowsing, psychic abilities, you'll get possessed by those things. What would you say? I know that's not true. That's totally not true. But from a Christian perspective, people are still dealing with these old ways of thinking. I'm answering my emails this morning and just getting over and over. It's the same thing. That's why this podcast is flourishing right now. People are coming out of religion and have nobody to talk to. So we have guests on the show just to kind of share their experiences. But for someone who is demon possessed, like what would be some things that would open you up for demonic possession? I know you've had some encounters with unclean energies and things like that. What would be something that would open people up to demonic oppression?
From what I've learned, and this doesn't necessarily have to be anything demonic, it could just be otherworldly. Sometimes just as simple as having your guard down would be able to open you up to demonic possession. Sometimes being intoxicated is more than enough. Yeah. I remember, so my personal experience with possession, I remember I did have a problem with, I know this sounds kind of crazy and stuff, but I did have a problem with a genie habitation. And, there wasn't anything in particular that I remember doing. It's not like I was involved in a seance, or that I invited anything in, or that, I committed some, quote unquote egregious sin or whatever. But what I do remember is that, my attitude about things changed. And just being super negative and not wanting to, do any kind of, good hygiene or anything. Really getting annoyed when I hear people talking about God or anything holy.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's a good indication, right?
Yeah, generally. Yeah. Because I was already aware of these things, I was able to kind of catch this early. So, I knew somebody who knew of somebody else that actually does these sort of exorcisms of these genies. And I remember just showing up there, and it was a line of us. I mean, so apparently this is so common that they do it a few times a week. And they had us stand with our hands like out there as they're saying these prayers and blessings. And I remember my hands I remember it was, they were saying it. I'm like, okay, yeah, whatever. They think these words are really going to work, And I was like, okay, I'll just be there to humor them, whatever. And my hands just started like clenching up. Mm. And I said, well, I better behave because this is going to be obvious. So, I opened my hands again and it clenched up again. And I forced them open again and they clenched up. And I thought, oh my God, something's happening here. And, it was like my hands started kind of shaking to open these up. And then finally it just clenched up and I fell down to my knees and I let out this wailing that I've never, ever done. I didn't even know how I was able to do this. And I just immediately started crying like super hard. And, the religious leader came to me. He recognized immediately what was happening, which was that, this entity was coming out of me. So he started yelling at me, close your eyes. Otherwise it's going to come out of your eyes and you're going to go blind. And, he started telling me to repeat some words and I refused. So he hit me on the head, like just hit the entity essentially. And, as they were exercising it, they didn't take it to trap it. They took it to banish it. So they burn it. And as it's getting burned, and it's not the same kind of burning as like throwing something into a bonfire. It's their version of fire for these entities. It was, through me, it was screeching in horror and pain even before it was reaching the fire because it knew what its fate was. So, inside of me, I'm having this wrenching feeling of, oh my God, I'm actually involved in killing something. The way I could kind of compare it to a little bit is, do you ever toss a lobster into boiling water and you could kind of hear it screaming? It was kind of something like that. You're doing it, and at the same time, you kind of, the other alternative is not really so good. So it took a few minutes of the process, and it was extremely unpleasant. The muscle contractions involved, just the amount of energy that it literally pulls out of you. And you could feel that something has left you. You could feel some kind of empty cavity in you somehow. It's really wild. And what they did is they gave me kind of a regimen of holy water and holy paper. And they said, okay, with the holy water, take it and spray it in your house every night after you say some words, and put it in the four corners just to keep your house clean. Keep yourself up with prayer and close to God. And with the holy paper, I was supposed to stick it in water for 7 days. I think it was like in the south east corner of my house. And after that, start drinking like a bit of it every single day for the next month or so. And they told me to come back after a few weeks, because they said, you're essentially now an open vessel. So anything could come into you during that time until you finally close up. And apparently it's so common that something does usually come in. People slip up. We're only human.
Yeah. That's a scary thing we've discussed here that I've never heard discussed a lot. Like, you have evangelists that travel and they do this in a city and they cast demons out of people, and then they leave. And that person's there with the demon gone but the person has no way of like walking this out, no accountability and things like that. And these spirits do try to come back themselves. And if they can't come back, then it says that they get 7 other spirits stronger than they are. And if they come back, then the state of that person is 7 times worse off than before. So this is something that is very delicate.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I've heard is that, they have feelings too, just like humans. Mm-hmm. So you could be exercising and killing a relative of one of these entities, and they might want to get revenge. Yeah. So it's not only just the possession that you'd have to worry about, but the infestation in and around your home and your world in general, where, you just, be at the wrong place at the wrong time kind of thing. But really it's them facilitating it, because a lot of time the way these powers work, especially with intentions, is it seems to take the route of least resistance and manifest that way if it's something kind of weak. But if it's more directed, you will be harassed. I was lucky when I went back. They went through the same ritual and everything, and there was no crying and falling to my knees or anything like that. So they're like, okay, good. You've been sticking to what you need to do. But I remember a feeling of mourning, like feeling very sad about this. And I think sometimes it could be those entities around you that kind of insert these feelings, or, it's, or it could be just the human side of us where, sometimes if you kill something, I don't necessarily think this thing was evil, but I do think that it was, with the laws of genies, they have very, very specific rules and forbidden areas, and inhabiting a human is one of their bigger sins. So it could have been just, a good genie that did something stupid. Yeah. So there could be that human side where you kind of notice that if you're more in tune, like, oh man, this person's punishment, or this entity's punishment went like above and beyond. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you like I said, you do have to be careful, because, if they have family, if they have close ones next to them, sometimes they might have more of a tendency to revenge. And the other thing is, because they've lived a lot longer than humans, and because they're a different kind of form of energy than we are, they tend to look on humans as not being as evolved as them, and not being as smart, as smart and as developed and as wise. If you're around for 900 years, imagine how much more than someone that's, just our ages.
Yeah, a lot of trickster spirits and things like that, like poltergeist and stuff like that. So when it comes to the practice of like capturing a djinn or a spirit, usually, I guess in the fable, I guess we can look at Aladdin. That's like our big thing to look at. And so you would have this lamp or this genie in a bottle or whatever, and you capture it, and you get to command it to do things, or grant you these wishes, or whatever the case is. A lot of other movies and lore will show us that you can ask for these wishes, you can have this djinn do things for you, but usually it spoils. Usually they want something in return. It's not just, oh, you got me, the whole leprechaun thing. If you catch me, you get a wish or whatever. There is like all of these different stories that are very similar of catching these spirits or leprechauns or whatever, fairies, and getting them to do stuff for you. But something usually happens. These spirits want something from you. They want you to wear a necklace that represents them on the earth. They want an altar. They want a statue. They want a piece of your mind. They want to live with you. These type of things, which can be scary, which can lead to possession with dealing with some of these trickster or smart entities. Do you have any knowledge or information about these things that they want to bring you with riches, wealth, hidden knowledge, secret knowledge of the heavens, or those type of things, but they want something in return? Yeah,
and you don't even have to catch them to do that. There's just like there's a lot of low life humans, there's a lot of low life entities like that. All you have to do is it's kind of like a criminal for hire sometimes. And, all you have to do is say the ritual, the spell, and it's so easy to conjure them up. You don't have to trap them. And if you're very lucky, they're willing to do your bidding and then leave you alone. But
what's the safe way though versus just the chance of luck? You said if you're lucky. What if you're not lucky? So like, what is the good outcome of that? Is there like so there is a proper way to do this and to protect yourself and those type of things? Or is it just kind of the luck of the draw?
I would say it's the luck of the draw. I haven't seen anything to where
someone's successful and they're like a millionaire, got a great business because they got hidden knowledge from an entity. What about like the...
Oh, no, I've seen that. Okay. I've seen that for sure. But, there's always some kind of trade-off.
Yeah.
And the other thing I've seen, I wanted to... I did meet one person that was very, very skilled in black magic, and especially with using the genies. Mm-hmm. This person was... it was almost like they were one of them in some ways.
Yeah.
That was the thing. She just ended up being comfortable living with them and having, she just tolerated some of the harassment she got sometimes.
The guy who taught me, he was a warlock, and it was the same thing. He was harassed, but it was normal. That was his life. They lived in his house. They turned lights off and on. He woke up with hearing shouting matches in his living room and parties, and nobody was there, those type of things.
Yeah. And when I asked her how she got into it, she told me that she was, one of her first encounters was that she was actually raped by a djinn. Mm. So, when you're in like older world countries and virginity is taking more of a virtue and more of, if a girl doesn't have that, then it's, that's it for the rest of her life. She's got a problem. She said, it would have been a lot better if she was raped by a man than raped by a djinn, because now not only does she sound dirty, but she also sounds crazy and unholy. Mm-hmm. So that's how she got into it. She basically kind of felt like, well, there was nothing else to lose. And what's the worst that could happen? So here's the thing. It's very hard for them to kill you. Unless, they get you to somehow kill yourself, but usually they're not going to do that. Usually they're going to see you as a tool that they could use on this earth, like a human that they could use.
Yeah.
And with her, like I said, she just got very comfortable, and she didn't get rich off of it, but she got by. She had a roof over her head. And the spells she used them for spell work and stuff too. And determining, finding out answers. But these were really tangible things that she got. It wasn't just tapping in and, this ethereal message that you could get and relay. These were things where like, I remember one of the clients that came in was a girl, and she felt that some kind of bad magic spell had been put on her. And the reason she felt this way is because some guy proposed marriage to her, and he was extremely handsome. He was very well off. And she was very impressed by him, but only a week after she met him, she was extremely turned off, and she would see him kind of as like a monkey or an ape. Mm. So she felt there was some kind of shapeshifter mask going on, or definitely some kind of spell. And she was, she broke out in acne. She started, her weight started changing, her health started changing. So they thought it was a spell. And so she comes to this woman, and the woman has a pot of water. She puts some black pepper in it, and she says it was like she was speaking in tongues. You couldn't really discern what language it was. And I think she asked it like 5 times or 7 times, or she said the same things over again. And then you heard like a very distinct knock coming. Oh, she covered the pot with a lid. And so she asked it again, and it knocks, and then a third knock. And she goes, okay, we got it. And then she lifts up the lid, and there was like 3 pieces of paper in there. And the paper was just written like, several, like it was someone's name written in 3 pieces. So she put it together, and it turns out to be this person's neighbor had her eyes on this guy. And her and her mom got very jealous of it. So they went to somebody to cast a spell so that the relationship wouldn't work, hoping that they would be able to, to snag this guy. The girl, everything was fine with her. I mean, she, the spell was off. It was dispelled. I later caught up with her, and I followed up with her like years later, like almost 10 years later. And I asked her how things were going. And she said she went back one more time just, for a follow up, and she was given a name, like a first initial of a guy that she was supposed to meet. And she goes, I met him that very next week, and that was the guy that I ended up marrying. So she didn't marry the first guy. And her neighbor never ended up getting married. So it backfired on the neighbor. So nothing happened to the magician or the woman doing, asking the jinns for answers. Nothing bad happened to the girl who, was getting the suitors, but it was the neighbor that, the original person that was actually casting the spell where all this backfired on them.
Wow. That's very interesting. The guy who taught me, about the craft or whatever you want to call it, he was a warlock. He dealt with these spirits and stuff, and it was very, very similar of getting these spirits to go out and do your bidding and stuff. But he didn't refer to them as Djinn. He was dealing with what we would call the elemental spirits. The spirits, it's probably the same thing or in the same type of kingdom, but he would do the same thing. I mean, they would go out and do things for him. I had an encounter with one because I stole something from the gentleman. And a spirit came back to get it, like a physical manifestation of this spirit being appeared through me and my cousin to the ground, and very crazy encounter. It changed my life forever. It didn't. You would think that it would be a warning to those type of things, but it's like, you know what? This is real. Like I want to know what he's doing and know how to do it. So I got even deeper into it to study this stuff out years ago. It happened to me as a teenager. So it's really interesting to note these spirits and getting information and stuff. And we've talked about this a lot on the show. And what do they want, and what do you have to give up, and is the trade worth it, and is it with everything? Especially we're talking about people trying to attain like wealth and prestige jobs in their dream lives or whatever, dealing with spirits or getting spirits to go out and help them. Angel magic. I think the principles are there, but there's so many books and so many practices of, I deal with Djinn, I deal with, angels, I deal with fairies to go out and kind of do the same thing. When it comes down to that, though, there's like just the trade-off. Is it worth it? I think we can look at the Masons, right? The Freemasons who, like in the higher up levels, deal with spirits, right? They deal with spirits and entities. And so if we're looking at someone who is trying to be prestige and well off in the community and things, it's not all of them. You have to really get into the higher paths of that. But it's very similar. Someone communicating with spirits or dealing with ritual and benefiting from it, right? Some type of order that's formed off of that. When we look at Solomonic magic, Solomon did the same thing, and it was essentially a genie. It was essentially a Djinn. He would capture these spirits, and he had a ring, and he had control over the spirits that he would ask them questions, and he would make them tell him the answer. But in the end, he ended up pretty much becoming possessed when he lost control, and these spirits came back with a vengeance, right, when he lost his power. So very interesting when we're talking about demonic possession, dealing with demons. Is it worth it? So when we're talking about this very openly, candidly, it's fun, it's exciting. It is. But there's you really can't talk about it without talking about the discretion and be careful and do these things to keep yourself covered. We'd be doing people a disservice if we did, So one of the things out there, like in Hollywood, like all of this stuff is in movies, and you want it to be real, and then you're told that it's not, but then you find out, no, most of the stuff in the movies is real. You're like, what? This stuff is legit. People can tap into it, so you just jump in gung-ho. I think that's kind of what happened to me. But moving on to another topic I want to make sure we touch on, we're talking about astrology. So I come from a biblical reference and studying the scriptures for what they are. Not so if we would hear astrology in the Christian church, most people would freak out. You know, God rebuked the astrologers and said you won't be able to tell the signs anymore, those type of things. And so we read these type of rebukes that God did to these different seers and stargazers and astrologers, but to do the research, to understand that God rebuked everybody for having an impure heart. So there was times where, like in the scriptures, Yahweh rebuked the worshipers. He said, I will no longer listen to your music that you play for me. Your music will just sound like crashing cymbals. But yet we still play music and we offer up praises to God and sing hymns and those type of things, and he receives them. The same thing with astrology and astronomy as well. All of that stuff is in the Bible. It's very interesting to see that the constellations are mentioned from one of the oldest books in the Bible, the book of Job. It talks about Orion, the Pleiades, the seven sisters, and all of this stuff. And then it talks about Jesus holding the seven stars in his hand, and all of this talk about Venus and Lucifer being the morning star. It's all in there, and it's not demonic. Like this is what they did. These are somewhat, I guess you would say, primitive people, but definitely spiritual people for that matter. And they followed the moon, they followed the stars as a calendar, as signs and symbols and dates and things like that. So when it comes to understanding astrology, how does it affect us, like the constellations that we're born under? I know there's been studies and things like that of people who are born, you know, under the same astrological chart, and they have very similar lives. They're into a lot of the same things, those type of things, and they've done studies on this. So when you break it down to a spiritual and somewhat of a scientific level, how does that correlate with someone being born under a certain astrological chart?
Well, as they say, the stars incline, they do not compel. So they give you certain tendencies. It's kind of like being born with a certain, say you're born with an athletic ability, or you're born with the gene for alcoholism. It doesn't mean that you're going to be a star athlete or that you're going to become an alcoholic. But you're going to have more of a tendency to it if you do get involved in it. You might even have an inclination to do it, or a desire for those things. When we look at something as simple as the moon and how the moon even affects the tides, we can't really deny that a lot of these planets and asteroids that are involved would be not affecting us in some way. Furthermore, this is, when we're born at a certain time, what it is that we're stamped with that energy. And I call it being geotagged in some way. It's even as you're in the womb, there are, the cosmic rays and the particles can knock genes out of one place and put it into another. And that affects, that could affect the way you look, how smart you are, whatever, phenotype that you come out with, so to speak. So, I'm always very surprised that astrology is really poo-pooed. When you're just look at the science of it. Even look at all the signs around us. I mean, these are undeniable. They're not just correlations. There's clear causation there. So, what I say is that, if you're born under a certain sign or a certain kind of planetary alignment, and we're inclined to do something, but we're not compelled, the thing that's involved there is free will. So we are all born with that gift of being able to make our choices and making the decisions that we have. So say you're born with heavy scorpionic influences in your chart to where you're going to enjoy seeing bloodshed. Well, you could follow that instinct and either become Jack the Ripper or you could become a surgeon. So,
Good.
You can't, there are ways to.
You could become a musician or a painter, someone who's very creative, right?
Exactly. So, there are ways to work with it for whatever the greater good is at that time.
I have a friend who he uses astrology as his psychiatry. So he's supposed to go see a psychiatrist and stuff, but it works better for him to know which energies are coming through, how he's going to feel on a certain type of date, so he'll know whether he should start something or go into a relationship or whatever the case is, and it's working for him. And it seems to be working for a lot of people of like starting new things on a new moon. It works with the crops of different, cycles with the moon when we're planting stuff. I've released albums and things like that on the different equinoxes and with the moon cycles, looking at like, the ancient Hebrews, they went off of the moon. There's something interesting too when it comes to like dealing with the Hebrews, because they would do the Sabbath from one new moon to the next every 7 days, and then from one new moon into the next. And so there's some scientific studies that's showing that like the body heals itself and regenerates faster during a new moon. And this was like commanded in the scriptures, not to work but to rest and enjoy family and those type of things during the new moon. So it's really interesting when the spirituality and the science kind of cross paths with that. That's really cool. One thing I wanted to ask you about, just to play devil's advocate, I think it's healthy to do that, talking about astrology and talking about the placebo effect, right? There's certain websites, there's certain astrological charts that I've read about myself that are spot on, but it's kind of freaky how spot on it is. But then other people will read it and it may be spot on for them too. Is the placebo thing there? If we're expecting it for us, it's like everybody gonna read that and feel like, yeah, I'm creative, yeah, I'm impulsive or whatever. Like when you read it, do you just kind of go with it, or is that to be played with it at all? Is there some that's just general for everybody, and if you believe it becomes true for you type deal?
Well, I do think sometimes there's some retrofitting that could happen where sometimes something might happen, like your computer crashes and you're like, oh well, Mercury's retrograde, but it does fit with what Mercury retrograde does. So in some ways it's, a lot of people are like, oh, come on, you believe in that crap? And other times it's like, well, it hasn't crashed until now. Yeah.
I was forced to believe in it. I didn't want to put no stock into it. And then I started seeing relationships deteriorate and stuff happen. I'm like, oh my God, there's got to be something to this, Oh
yeah. I mean, to me, it's, there is a bit of a science to the astrology. RCA, when they had their radio towers up, they have high radio towers and they have low radio towers. And it was a lot cheaper to just use the low radio towers. However, whenever there was a certain aspect between Jupiter and Saturn, they found that their lower radio towers weren't working. So they ended up using their higher radio towers. And that saved them millions of dollars because it was very expensive to use the high radio towers all the time. They had to be manned. It was just, they were remote locations at the time. So these people had to be paid more. It was heavier equipment. And they would start using astrology. Some people would say they were using meteorology or forecasting so it could sound more mainstream. But these are things that, you ask any police department and they say, yeah, during the full moon, we do get more crime. And then there's, the naysayers or the people that just want to put it down and say, oh no, that, they just think it does. And just because those numbers happen, that's because they're only going out and arresting more people. And subconsciously it's like, oh, come on. Sometimes a fact is a fact. I mean, like the sun is up, it's in the sky, accept it, the way I see it is that knowledge is power, and you don't have to believe in it. You don't have to follow it. But if you're aware of it and you take it, you take note of it, you don't have to let this rule your life, right? We watch the weather all the time, the majority of us. And in knowing that it might be raining tomorrow, you have a heads up on how to prevent getting wet. And if you don't want to listen to that, well, that's on you. And if it doesn't rain, okay, well, at least you were prepared.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. It really is. You have that knowledge and that foresight to, just in case, because it might not rain. A lot of times they tell you it's going to be sunny, then it does rain, or whatever the case is. But like I said, if it does happen, you're prepared. So that's very... That's a great practical way of looking at it. Talking about palmistry, where does that start? I know you said your parents kind of were into that, or you got into that at a very young age. Where does one begin? Does it come from reading books? Is it a form of intuition, or how does that even work?
In my case, it was just a lot of it was just from watching my mom, and she wasn't trying to be mystic or evasive about it. I mean, she would just point it out, like, oh wow, your headline and your love line are very close together, and what that means is, yeah. So she was very good at spelling things out, and that when you're young, your mind is more like a sponge, and you could pick these things up. And later on, I did start to read books just to see if I could get it structured. And it was pretty much a lot what my mom said. But then there is intuition involved. There is a sense of, do you want to be coming off as a Vulcan and, reading it where, you're doing this robotic sense, or do you want to get that human touch involved? No pun intended with palmistry. To where, it's not just that gives you the answers. It's kind of like when you go to a doctor, he could, and you have a cough, he could listen to your chest to determine exactly where the cough is. But, then if he takes an x-ray, that's even, that's more of a layer of your diagnosis. If he takes a sputum sample, that's even more information. And, with that, you could target exactly what to do and how to follow things. And it's like that, I think, with a lot of these metaphysical practices, and that if you're using just astrology or just palmistry or just tarot or whatever, it's just one facet of things. Where if you keep on layering them, you get to discover more and more. And as you layer, I think the glue to it is intuition. Mm-hmm.
Yep. I think so too. I think that a lot of the things that we're mentioning, we're talking about, I think it's all tools. I don't think that any of it's good or bad. I think it can be used for good or bad. I think you can channel evil spirits, or you can channel to receive influence from the Holy Spirit, right? So it's a tool that we're born with, these psychic type of abilities, or whatever you want to call it, ESP, extrasensory perception. I think we all have that, and at times it's heightened, and it's a muscle. We can use it, we can work it out, we get good at it, we learn how to discern other spirits around, how spirits feel when they're around, how people look, and how other people act when they are oppressed themselves, so we can be used at seeing them walk in true healing as well. So I think all of this stuff is tools as well. So we talked about some of the demonic stuff. We talked about the Djinn and the demons and possession and stuff like that. I don't want to end there. I want to talk about some of the beautiful angelic experiences that you've had too. Like you're dealing with healing, you're dealing with readings and stuff like that, synchronicities, influences from other beings and stuff. What are some of the angels or the guides that you've worked with that are here to assist, that don't have a hidden agenda? Well, maybe their hidden agenda is to bring healing versus to do harm, right? Those type of spirits to work with as well. You have any encounters with angelic beings and things along that nature?
Yeah, things where, I remember once, like personally, and it was something that happened that I think was very much an angelic intervention, was walking down the street, and it was kind of raining a little bit heavy. And I was rushing. I mean, I usually just rush everywhere I go to anyway. And I stopped dead in my tracks. And I remember thinking, God, this is strange. This looks very crazy. And I tried moving forward, and I couldn't. I was locked in place. And I heard this rustling sound above my head. And just like, a split second later, this big, huge tree branch comes down crashing. And it just misses me by like an inch or something. If I had kept on walking, I would have definitely been hit by that branch. And I always felt, for instance, that was like an angelic intervention. I've seen it. I see it more, these angelic interventions. I see it a lot more with young people than I do with older people. Mm-hmm. And I tend to think that it's, there's, because of the newness of this human being into the world, I think that, as adult humans taking care of them, we can only do so much. And a lot of times, if there's a lot of love around this child or this baby, that is calling them in a lot of ways to come and protect them. And you could see, I mean, like that film, for instance, Baby's Day Out, where, if he was an adult, chances are he probably would have died like 9 times already. But everything just lines up so perfect, and, you could look at that and say, oh, wow, what a lucky baby. But then, if you have the knowledge of the angelic, or if you want to believe in good spirits, you could look at that and say, well, no, this was lined up. And they have the ability for foresight, a lot of these spirits. So, a lot of these things can be prepared, like, oh, okay, we see the baby's going to be coming off the edge of the building soon, so let's make sure that we have that bar over, or that plane flying by that it could just fall on, or something strange. I think really the way it works is similar to the way it works with black magic or other entities, in that if you call them, if you just ask for their help, they're there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's really that simple. I think that there's the fear, like we're talking about, of getting involved with anything spiritual or meditation. Like there's such a stigma there. Like I remember I did a video and I named the video "Is Meditation Demonic?" So many people laughed at the title, but I can't express how many inbox questions I've gotten, and I've had conversations with people who are religious, and they think that if you empty out your mind, you'll get possessed or whatever. But essentially, like we're saying, everything is a tool. Like you can use it for good or bad. That's all. Prayer, meditation, yoga, like like everything is there. So it's not like everything works off of the intention. And so being intuitive is learning how to even be sensitive to your own energy, or the energy that other people have around them, and be able to make those choices and start to see things happen, to start kind of stepping out to where you're seeing things change. You know what I'm saying? And it kind of builds your faith to where you want to do it more, that you want to engage this stuff even more. Before we go, I was on your website. I seen that your practice was featured on a big news segment. Was that your practice that was featured there, and that was you in the interview and everything? You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was
cool.
Pretty fun, actually. That was almost a year ago, where just they got in touch, and I asked them. I was curious because in the Midwest they're conservative. They're not really going to get into things like So I asked them about why they were interested in doing the segment. And apparently the producer, was very much into this. He's very open-minded about it, at least. And their sister affiliate in New York City did it. So he thought, well, why not, do it in Kansas City? So their affiliate station, KCTV5 for CBS in Kansas City, came and, we interviewed together. We did a segment on how your zodiac sign is able to influence what kind of exercise is best for you. And I think, overall, it was interesting. I like the feedback on it because there were a lot of people that were like, oh, come on, this is a lot of hogwash. Yet at the same time, it was one of the top hits on their website for the next 2 or 3 days. So obviously there's a lot of people that do follow it. They just can't admit that they want to follow it. Yeah. So I really think that you don't have to believe in it. It's kind of like if you have a certain religion, great, good for you. But understand that there's other religions out there. And you don't have to believe in their faith, but at least you know that there are other religions out there, whether you believe they're right or wrong. And that's the way I see it with the metaphysical. Know that it's out there. You don't have to, you don't have to see it as something evil. Again, I mean, we could even look at just weather forecasting. And do we want to even look at that and say, well, that's evil because now we're looking into the future?
Hey, there's people, I've heard it said, man. I've heard it said from a lot of religious people that they're false prophets. When they give you the forecast and it's wrong, that's a no, and it's you can get in trouble. There's people who believe that. Like I've heard that said before.
Wow, there's
all kind of, and so I think it goes along with what we said at the beginning, the difference between superstition and spirituality. There's a huge difference. Most church people I've met, they're superstitious. They're not spiritual by any means. They're scared that there's a demon behind everything. If I walk under this ladder, if this black cat crosses in front of me, those type of things, but with religious examples, right? And if I meditate, there's a demon that's going to get me. If I do yoga, I'll be possessed. Like these are literally things that people believe. I'm from the Bible Belt, so I get this stuff all the time, especially stepping out here and doing like a podcast and talking about this stuff openly. Was a religious leader, right? So I kind of come from that. But like you said, there's a lot of people who are into this stuff, and there's a lot of people who are just exploring, and they want to know, first of all, that they're not alone and stuff like that. People come to you for healing. People come to you because they want to know the things that you know, and they need help. And so you actually do private sessions with people from your website. If anybody wants to book a personal session with Cindy, you offer that. If you want to talk a little bit about your services and kind of plug that in your website, go ahead and do that before we end the show.
Well, thank you. So you could find me at www.kansascityastrology.com. It's all one word. And I do astrology, tarot, and dowsing remotely. Every now and then I do meet people in real life. I travel a lot, so that's why it becomes a little bit difficult to do that. But, we could do this, doing it over the phone or doing it over Skype or whatever it's still tapping in. It's still being able to. And really what we're looking at is if you need to see patterns of your life, if you need to get more insight into what's going on into your situation, I'm really good at doing both of those. Sorry about that. The one caveat I have is that if you're going to ask for information like this, the best thing that you could do is to be ready for the truth. Because once you're open and ready for the truth, that really opens up all the channels. If you're calling, but you're not really ready to hear what it is that you might not want to hear, you're already blocking the energies there.
I know, right? That kind of muddies the water sometimes when they want you to tell them what they want to hear. That kind of muddies the water. But what's really cool about doing private sessions, and you have a fee that you ask the people to pay if they can, those type of things. When people are willing to spend money for their healing, that's it. Like it's going to happen. Like that's the like stepping out in faith of wanting this so bad that I'm willing to pay you to help me. So you kind of owe it to that person to tell them the truth, to give them that healing versus them going to somebody else or whatever. But I've noticed that like you're just kind of facilitating the healing that's already within them. They just need to hear it vocalized. They need somebody to do an activation, to say a prayer, to pull some things out, shift some things around in the spirit realm. Those things that we've kind of given our lives over to do. But it's really cool that it makes it that much easier versus dealing with a skeptic and like, hey, let me let me show you, this is, I can really do it, you know, that type of deal, versus like they just want it so bad, right? They want it, they want a healing, they want to touch the divine, they want to tap in. I've noticed that the majority of the people who I've done personal one-on-one sessions they were people who want to do what I'm doing, like the majority of the people. And so they have to go through a process, and they have to learn, and they have to get some things out of them so that they can kind of walk in these spiritual practices without any hindrance. And so it's very beautiful whenever we get to do private sessions with people. And like you said, it's awesome to do it hands-on, one-on-one. But when you learn that you can do it through Skype or Zoom or video chat or telephone, things kind of shift to a whole new perspective, and you can actually do it from the privacy of your own home. So it's really cool. Thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for hanging out with me. I enjoyed it, and I hope you come back again soon sometime and do it again.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
All right, Cindy.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
God bless.
God bless you. Bye-bye.
Uh-oh. I'm going to find this screen. Forgive me, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, the show's not over yet. Got a few more minutes to talk. Cindy Mckean, guys. Cindy Mckean. I enjoyed that. Very good talk. I didn't know we were going to get into talking about the Djinn and the demons and things like that for that long, but I really enjoy those discussions. And so as much as we want to talk about the good stuff, we have to talk about the bad. It kind of goes hand in hand. So just a couple quick updates. Christy is asking in the comment section, she says, when I order your new album tomorrow, TruthSeekah, will you autograph it for me? Yes, all the pre-order albums will be autographed. I'm going to be autographing all of them. You'll get a digital download early. You also get your name entered into a drawing to win TruthSeekah wall tapestry. So all will be autographed. Also, too, I have something I want to talk about as well. We're talking about the good and the bad. Sometimes we don't want to do it. We don't want to acknowledge the bad because we feel like we give it power, those type of things. I have to talk about an encounter that I had this weekend. And I don't know if I should do just a whole video on this and just give it, or make this a segment. I don't know. But we talk about psychedelics from time to time. We talk about using mushrooms. I have so many friends who smoke marijuana. They use DMT. People doing vape pens of CBD oil, all this stuff. So this is something that's part of our conversation. We always use discretion when talking about any of it. I've been head over heels for my experiences with magic mushrooms, psilocybin, the plant teacher. But when it comes to marijuana, I'm at a different place with it because of my past. I've tried, I don't use marijuana. I've tried to of recent, and it just doesn't work out. I smoked marijuana as a teenager, like very young, like almost every day of when I was anywhere from 12, 13 years old, the first time doing it, all the way up to when I was 16. We'd smoke, certain years or months would go every day. But it took me to a place outside of myself. If my situation was bad, I didn't like the person who I was. I didn't like my mom. We had a bad relationship. Very unstable. And marijuana was my escape. It was my way to take me out of the present moment to a place where nothing mattered, a place where I could go to get away. This high that I would get from smoking weed as a teenager, and so I smoked weed for many years until one day there was no way I could quit, man. It was just something I was doing every day until one day I smoked some marijuana and ended up having a panic attack. My heart started racing. Couldn't breathe. I thought I was just hearing noises in my head. Crazy stuff. I turned pale. I'm gasping for breath. Couldn't breathe out of my throat. Felt like my esophagus was swollen shut. You know what I'm saying? I can only breathe barely through my nose, and I had to manually make myself breathe. And this went on for 3 hours straight. This was back in 2000. And 1999, 2000, it happened to me. And so I quit smoking. After that, I had this crazy panic attack. I'm crying, thinking I'm going to die, right? And this was off just smoking weed. And I did it every day up to that point. So I took a break, and then I smoked again with some friends, maybe 2-3 weeks later. Went over to some friends' house. They were smoking. I hit it one time and hit it kind of reluctantly because I didn't want that to happen again. I just took one hit. Just let me get a little buzz. Same thing happened in my body. It's like I had this weird allergic reaction type deal. My heart started racing, couldn't breathe, went on for 3 hours. My heightened senses of smell, like I could smell stuff far away, like gas. And it was not good. It was not fun. And so that's why I don't really smoke marijuana. That's what happened to me, 18 years ago now. So I've had a couple occasions where I've tried to smoke within the last couple of years. I've had some friends who do it, and I'll take a hit here, take a hit there. And it's like reluctant as well. And I can kind of feel that fear coming at times when I've done it. I never, smoked a whole bunch. It's always been like a hit here, a hit there, or whatever. So just this weekend, I had some friends come by, and they were smoking, had a bunch of weed, marijuana, and they also had a gummy, a marijuana THC gummy, medical use only is what it said on there. So I didn't smoke any, so I took a little bitty piece of that gummy. I ate the ear, just a little piece of it, and then 30 minutes later, I was feeling okay, and then so I had a beer or 2 or 3, and then I went back to the gummy, took off a bigger piece of it, was chewing on it, sucking on it, whatever, getting it in my gums, making sure I absorb it. And within an hour later, one of my friends left. Another friend was leaving, but at that time, I could feel it kicking in. I was feeling really weird in my spirit, feeling really weird in my body, and he left. And just a few minutes after he left, man, I felt that panic attack kick in. My heart started to race. I couldn't breathe. I started turning pale, sweating. And this is after me just being relaxed, and just all of a sudden, it's happening to me. So I called my friend back on the phone, Watchman. I called him back and said, hey, dude, I need you to come back. I'm having a panic attack, man. So he said, all right, bro, be right there. So he turns around and comes back, and it was not fun. The same thing happened to me, which happened to me about 18 years ago, but even worse, man. Your mind's playing tricks on you. But then again, like, it's not all in your head. Like, if it was, like, I can, in the spirit realm, I'm pretty strong. I can do things. I can make things happen. I've been places on both sides. So I have a confidence to kind of move around in the spirit realm and make things stop or start things or have encounters and experiences when I want. So I couldn't hear. Like, this thing had total control of me, man. I couldn't breathe. I was throwing up. My esophagus was swollen. Weird pains in my body. My back started to ache. All of just taking these little bitty bites of this THC gummy. And so he came back, and I was trying to get him to pray with me. That was the only thing that kind of would make it stop. But even still, man, to know that, like, I couldn't even control it by speaking it out or commanding it or whatever. It was something that I was kind of locked into, and it wasn't fun. It would maybe be fun if it was just all mental, like if it was just all in your head and you can let it take you and do whatever. And for a lot of people, it's like that. But I did some research afterwards, man. The majority of people who are eating these weed gummy bears are having these encounters. They're like, feel like they're doing cocaine by eating just a little piece of a gummy bear. Their heart starts racing, they start sweating, and they can't breathe. That's not fun by any means, especially when your mind is so far gone off of the high of the THC, and then that starts actually happening to your physical body and you can't stop it. Man, it was demonic, man. It was straight up demonic. I know and I'm not like condemning it, but I'm warning people, like, be careful, man. You know what I'm saying? We talk a lot about, I have a lot of friends who smoke weed every day, and they're fine. I know people who eat gummy bears all the time, but then no, I don't. I don't know anybody who eats the gummy bears all the time. Let me rephrase that. I have people who smoke weed every day, and they won't mess with gummy bears because it does that to their body. So be careful eating those edibles like that, man. It was straight demonic. Wasn't pleasant. My buddy, he came back and he prayed with me. I was listening to worship music, you know, but then he was kind of tripping too. So it's always hard when people are, you know, they can kind of make it better or worse, man. But I barely pulled my composure together when my wife and daughter walked through the door, and this was like at midnight. They were coming home, and this was, I think we did this like 8:30, man. And I barely pulled my composure together right before my wife and daughter. And like the worst fear would be my wife and daughter coming home and me tripping on a drug. You know what I'm saying? Like that's a fear of mine, you know. And it wasn't that the fear did it. And Watchman was telling me, and other people tell me, it's all in your head, bro. You know, your brain is that powerful that you created that, and your body started reacting. No, in my brain, I was cool. I'm laid back. I'm strong. I'm more than a conqueror. Like there's things that I'm confident in that I have no fear over. There's no fear in love, because perfect love casts out all fear. But when it's your body going through that stuff, I had no control over it. So I will warn you for that. You know, people hear me talking about my mushroom encounters and they get excited. They want to, you know, it piques their interest. I still give my warnings with that kind of stuff, but especially I wanted to share my story with that. And I don't like talking about this stuff. I don't like knowing that maybe I made a mistake. I definitely learned from it. You said that every trip or even a bad trip or whatever is a learning experience or a learning curve. I definitely learned from it. I thought I was going to die. Like you talking about your life flashing before your eyes and making sure you're on the right path and you're doing the right things. And man, I got to see how I was just like, you know what I'm saying, like a Dazio with my life and like chores around the house and little things, man, that just kind of, I just kind of push off that I need to be doing. So I definitely would use all experiences in my life to kind of see, to kind of learn from it, learn and kind of build on top of it. So yeah, good came from it. You know what I'm saying? I had to evaluate my life because I thought I was going to die. I knew I wasn't. The only thing that helped me is because I've been through it before. Even though it was 18 years ago, like I've been through it before. But I'm reading all these comments online of people having similar encounters, and they call in the ambulance. And trust me, I wanted to, but you know, you just had to kind of ride it out, man. It wasn't good at all. Just because of the body, not even the mental stuff. The mental stuff was crazy too, but just the body, man, what it does. You're sitting down perfectly calm, and your heart is just, I can't breathe. You have to make it. It's crazy. It's demonic, man. I'm telling you. I just had to say that, man. I just had to let everybody know what happened with that. So, and I'll say this. This is why it's not for me. I'm not saying that it's not for you. I'm not saying that you can't do it. That's between you and God, right? But for me, it's not for me. And so I talk about weed playing a role in my life weed playing a role in my life to pull me out of my situation, to be a form of escapism, to make everything a little bit more tolerable. I got friends who eat pills to do that to this day. They eat a Loratab, a Xanax. The kids are crying. The wife's complaining. They eat a pill. Hey, everything's good, bro. You know what I'm saying? And I know people who smoke weed to this day, and it helps them cope with life. That was my form of escape when I was a teenager. But I have to be 100% honest. Like my form of escape now, I still have a form of escape. It's Jesus. It's the presence of the Holy Spirit. When I feel like I don't belong, when I feel scared, when I feel oppressed, I get in the presence of God. I spend time with Jesus, and he makes everything okay. He is my place of refuge, my place. He is my strong tower, my fortress from the enemies. He will protect me, watch over me, send forth angels to guide me, protect me. Like that is my place that I go to hide, to cope with life. Right? Is in the presence of Jesus, and so, weed being a form of escapism. For me, I don't know what it is for you. You may do it just for fun. You like the way it makes you feel. But weed was that for me. Now, it shows you when that happens to you, like, I don't want to leave the present moment. The power is in the present moment. Why would we want to escape it? I have a beautiful family. a loving wife, amazing daughter. Why would I want to run from that? Why would I want to hide from that? And so maybe it's just for me, but I know it's not. There's a lot of people resonating with this. But the power is in the moment. We can't run from it. That's where all the power is. That's what we create. And so to take you out of that moment, just be careful, guys. That's all I'm going to say. And I'm going to say this, man. Like I said, I have people who do this, and they're okay with it, and they can. And I don't judge you, man. That's between you and God. I'm looking for this writing that spoke to me some time ago. And I'm going to try to read it here. It's kind of long, but I'm going to read this. This is a writing from G.D. Watson. Let me make sure this is it. Okay, here we go. This is called Others May, You Cannot. And the Holy Spirit has standards upon some people's life, and that's what causes us not to be able to do this type of stuff or not be comfortable in places that he has not called us to. He's put a seal upon us, man, to protect us and guide us. And so I'm going to read this. This is powerful. This was written in the late 1800s, I believe, early 1900s. And so it starts off with a scripture. It says Matthew 16:24-25. If anyone wishes to come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever wishes to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. Matthew 16:24. If God has called you to be truly like Jesus, he will draw you into a life of crucifixion and humility. He will put on you such demands of obedience that you will not be allowed to follow other Christians. In many ways, he seems to let other believers do things which he will not let you do. Others who seem to be very religious and useful may push themselves up to be admired and scheme to carry out their plans, but you cannot. If you attempt it, you will meet with such failure and rebuke from the Lord as to make you sorely penitent. This is older. Others can brag about themselves, their work, their successes, but the Holy Spirit will not allow you to do any such thing. If you begin to do so, he will lead you into some deep mortification that will make you despise yourself in all your good works. This is good. I've been there. Others will be allowed to succeed in making great sums of money, or in having a legacy left to them, or in having luxuries. But God may supply you only on a day-to-day basis. Because he wants you to have something far better than gold, a helpless dependence on him and his unseen treasury. The Lord may let others be honored and put forward while keeping you hidden in obscurity, because he wants to produce some choice, fragrant fruit in you, which can only be produced in the shade. God may let others be great, but he will keep you small. He will let others do work for him and get the credit, but he will make you work and toil without others knowing how much you are doing. Then, to make your work still more precious, he will let others get the credit for the work which you have done. This is to teach you the message of the cross and humility. The Holy Spirit will put a strict watch on you with a jealous love, rebuke you for careless words and feelings, or for wasting your time, which other Christians never seem to be distressed over. So make up your mind that God is infinite and sovereign, and has a right to do so as he pleases with his own, and that he may not explain to you the thousands of things which may puzzle your reason in his dealings with you. If you absolutely give yourself to be his slave, he will wrap you in a jealous love and let other Christian people say and do many things which you cannot. However, know this is the great secret of the kingdom. When you are so completely possessed with the living God that you are, in your secret heart, pleased and delighted over this peculiar, personal, private, jealous guardianship and management of the Holy Spirit over your life, then you will have found the vestibule of heaven, the high calling of God. Others may, you cannot. God allows people to get away with so much, and they don't seem to have that same moral compass as you. Other people are successful. Others can do things and get away with it. Even me. Don't take my grace, don't take my liberty as a right to sin. If you have a strong conviction of the Holy Spirit within you in your personal sanctification process, you have to be obedient to that. No matter what I say, no matter what I tell you, you should be able to hear from God yourselves about the choices and the decisions that you make in your life. And you should be led of the Holy Spirit. We have many teachers that come and go in our lives, and we can learn so much from them, but you can only go as high as that teacher is. You can't go any higher. But if you're led of the Holy Spirit, you're led of God, He is your teacher. He will take you to places that mind is not comprehended, and heart is not even thought of, the places that God will bring you to, and He will make that which is in you perfect. He will finish that good work in which He started within you. So do not get weary in well-doing. Learn to follow the voice of the Holy Spirit in your life to lead you to greatness. And so with that being said, man, it's just about, that's not for me. That definitely relates not only to the marijuana thing, but definitely to the marijuana thing. Other people can smoke it. I have other Christians who, they say it helps them be able to tap in with God. They smoke weed, they get into the spirit, whatever. It helps them get closer to God, helps them pray. And I have people who will debate me blue in the face about that. And that's between them and God. I can't. I've tried it. You know what I'm saying? And not just for the marijuana thing. It goes for so much stuff. So much stuff that others get to do and others get to get away with, but the Holy Spirit will not let you live with the clean conscience. And this whole thing about this Christian walk, this spiritual walk, whatever walk of life you're coming from, it's about having clean hands and a pure heart in everything that you do. Let not your hearts be troubled, but just walk with being open before God. It says that King David would dance nakedly before God. And in order to dance nakedly without restrictions, without anything holding him back, it's about not trying to hide anything from God, trying to hide anything, just like Adam. What was the sin? Adam tried to hide from God that he was naked. He tried to act like he didn't do it. So with us being open with God about everything that goes on in our mind, everything that's in our heart, all of our secrets, all of the things that we don't like about God or Christianity or religion or people or ourselves or our family, to be open with God. Don't carry it. Don't try to hide it. Don't try to keep it for yourself. Give it to Him and let Him wash it. Let Him clean it. And whatever it is in your life, if He gives it back to you, then that's a blessing and you can walk forward with it. All of our idolatry, all of the things that we hold above Him, trust me, give it up. All of your hurt, all of your pains, all of your wounds, your doubting, give it to Him. And if he meant for you to carry it, He'll wash it, He'll clean it up, and He'll give it back to you. So with that, I'm going to say peace and shalom. Thank you guys for supporting the work that I do. I'm coming right back on here with another broadcast. We're going to go live again. I got another interview to do. So I love each and every one of you guys. So take it for what it is, man. Everybody's in a different walk in their life. I don't like to admit when I'm wrong or when I'm messed up. I'm an example for a lot of people. So I definitely don't like to you know what I'm saying, admit that. But for me to get my healing and for me to, you know what I'm saying, to walk in my victory, I have to do it as well. And so I have to admit when I messed up. I told my wife what I did. And it's not that it was bad, but you know what I'm saying, you can't hide anything, man. That's the whole thing. You have to just be open before God. So man, I love you guys. Thank you guys for listening to me rant, and thank you guys for being here for me when I need you guys. So thank you guys. Thursday night, School of the Mystics. We're going to be talking about what we're talking about right now, how to hear the voice of God prophetically, respond to it, and find out the ways that God speaks to us in our lives. And so Thursday night, 7 p.m., School of the Mystics, TruthSeekah.com. I love each and every one of you guys. I'll be back right after this. God bless and shalom.
Your way so much higher than mine, so much higher than mine. Your so much deeper than mine, so much deeper than mine.
Well, that does it for this episode, folks. To hear more episodes of the TruthSeekah podcast, head over to TruthSeekah.com. And if you're wanting to support the show and get rewards, go to our Patreon page at patreon.com/TruthSeekah.